I once almost died, but I was able to recover and I feel like I've been reborn. I'm ready to start my life over, but I can't be bothered to take care of an old woman. Although my husband was able to recover from his illness because I became a donor, he never expressed any gratitude. In fact, he handed me a business card of a divorce lawyer. Although I felt frustrated and anxious, I wasn't shocked. Ever since he regained his mobility, he had been out and about, which had already made me suspicious. And now, I am the one who is sick. I have been diagnosed with stomach cancer. Fortunately, it is not advanced, but I will have to start treatment with surgery and chemotherapy. I am filled with anxiety and I can't believe he is abandoning me like this. All my love and trust for my husband has vanished in an instant. The hardest part is that, for our daughter, Kate, he is undoubtedly her only father. I feel guilty about her becoming fatherless, but with my upcoming battle against the disease, I don't have the energy to try to repair our relationship. A month later, I received a series of aggressive calls from my husband, which I ignored. Eventually, he showed up at my hospital room and dropped a bombshell. My name is Christy Young, a 29-year-old housewife. I have been married to Mike, who is a year older than me, for 7 years, and we have a lovely 5-year-old daughter, Kate. I used to work full-time as a regular employee even after we got married, but I quit when I went on maternity leave. I really wanted to take it slow and raise Kate, but due to the economic downturn, we couldn't afford to live on my husband's salary alone. So, as soon as Kate was able to go to daycare, I started working again. I got a job at an apparel company where my sister-in-law, Lisa, is the president. They were looking for an office worker, and since I had similar experience from my previous job, they hired me right away. Although I am a relative, I was not pampered, but the atmosphere in the office was good, and there were many senior mothers, so it was easy to consult about childcare and take leaves for sudden fevers of my child. I am really grateful that I was introduced to such a good workplace. However, it was extremely tough to juggle work, housework, and childcare. In the morning, I prepared breakfast for my husband and Kate, made my husband's lunchbox, sent him off, took Kate to daycare, and went to work. After work, I picked up Kate, went shopping, came home, cleaned, bathed Kate, and prepared dinner. By the time I finished preparing Kate's meal, my husband came home, so I prepared his dinner, and while he was eating, I put Kate to bed. Although my days were hectic, my husband was not very cooperative with housework or childcare. Even if Kate had a fever in the morning and I was busy taking care of her, he would still say, "Where's my breakfast?" without any concern. When I asked him to do the grocery shopping because I had to work late, he complained, "I am tired from work." I was tired from work too, but I didn't have the energy to argue, so I ended up doing everything by myself. Our lives took a sudden turn when my husband was advised to have a detailed examination after his company health check showed some bad results. My husband didn't want to get retested because he said he didn't feel any pain and was fine, but he started to feel a little uncomfortable in his daily life, with unexplained bruises all over his body, bleeding gums just from brushing his teeth. It would be terrible if he ignored it and it turned out to be a serious illness. We have to think about Kate's future, so I asked him to get a thorough checkup, and it turned out he had leukemia.
Why me?
He was shocked to hear a familiar disease name. However, leukemia is not incurable nowadays. There are many cases of remission and social reintegration through chemotherapy and bone marrow transplantation. I decided to support my husband, who was on the verge of despair and self-destruction, and accompany him through the treatment. He took a leave of absence from work and was admitted to the hospital immediately. As for me, I had to manage work, housework, childcare, and supporting my husband's treatment. I reached my limit before my husband did. The stress of hospitalization made him lash out at me more than before, which was one of the reasons. I knew it was misplaced anger, but I was honestly exhausted from going to work, taking care of Kate, doing housework, and visiting the hospital in my spare time. That's when Lisa, my sister-in-law, reached out to me. "Why don't you live with me? I can help with the housework and taking care of Kate." She was the president of a company, and I knew from working at the same place that she was always on the front lines of sales. She made a point of picking up feedback from the field rather than leaving everything to her subordinates, which made it easier for the staff to exchange opinions. So, I knew how busy she was. I really can't impose on you. You're busy too. If you collapse now, Kate will be the one who suffers the most, right? I will support Mike as much as I can. You should rely on those who can help you now, Lisa said firmly, and I couldn't hold back my tears. I was worried about Mike, Kate's future, and my own health. I was really grateful for Lisa's presence, and her encouraging words saved me. Mike's parents had already passed away, and Lisa was living alone in her parents' house. I've always thought it was too big for one person. I didn't want to sell it because it has memories of my parents, but I'm glad you two can come. She warmly welcomed me and Kate. Living with Lisa was very comfortable. We had always gotten along well, and it felt like I had gained a real sister. Lisa, who had been living alone for a long time, was good at housework. She actively helped out, which made my life much easier than before. At that time, there was hope for my husband's treatment. I was found to be a compatible donor for his bone marrow transplant. As soon as Mike was diagnosed with leukemia, Lisa and I underwent testing to be bone marrow donors. The probability of finding a compatible donor is 1 in 4 among siblings, and it is said to be 1 in several hundred to several tens of thousands among unrelated people. We were devastated when we heard that Lisa's bone marrow was not compatible, but when we found out that I could be a donor for Mike, he was overjoyed. To provide bone marrow as a donor, I had to be hospitalized for several days. During that time, I had to take time off work and couldn't take care of Kate. It was a burden on Lisa, but she didn't show any signs of annoyance. Thank you so much for doing this for my brother. I will do everything I can to support you, so don't worry about anything. Just take care of yourself now. Encouraged by Lisa, I underwent bone marrow extraction surgery for my husband. After the surgery, Mike had to spend some time in a sterile room, being careful of infections while resting. I was discharged from the hospital after a few days and, thanks to my sister-in-law's kindness, took an additional 2 or 3 days off work before returning. The hematopoietic stem cells transplanted into Mike seemed to be working properly, and after a few weeks, he was able to move to a general ward. When I took our daughter, Kate, to visit Mike in the general ward, there was a nurse in the room. Seeing Kate after a long time, Mike smiled happily. Mr. Young is recovering well. He is still young and strong, so if he continues to make good progress, I think he can return to work soon. Thank you very much, as always. The nurse smiled and left the room. As she said, Mike's condition stabilized, and he was able to be discharged a few months later. Although he still needed to rest at home, the 4 of us, including Lisa, started living together in the in-laws' house. I had to take on all the responsibilities of work, housework, childcare, and taking care of Mike again, but it was less burdensome thanks to Lisa living with us. Moreover, Lisa is the type of person who can speak her mind clearly to Mike. You don't have to push yourself too hard, but you should practice doing some housework as part of your rehabilitation. Hearing this, Mike reluctantly started helping with the chores. However, since he was still recovering, I often ended up helping him, and eventually, he stopped doing even the things he could do, knowing that I would come to help if he dawdled. I still feel sluggish. Using that as an excuse, he wouldn't even try to get up from the sofa. When the doorbell rang while I was preparing dinner, and I asked him to answer it because I couldn't leave what I was doing, he sighed heavily and complained. They told me to rest, and you're being demanding. I couldn't help but think that it was not too much to ask, but only Mike knew the extent of his pain. So, I believed him and made an effort to move myself, even if it was a bit of a strain. Perhaps because I overexerted myself again, my health started to deteriorate. It became harder to eat, and Lisa started worrying that I might have lost weight. By this time, Mike had almost fully recovered and had returned to work. Even though I no longer had to take care of Mike, the household chores and childcare didn't decrease. Even when I was not feeling well, Mike, who had regained his energy, started going out alone more often on his days off. He didn't seem to notice that I was unwell and didn't offer to help with the chores. When I asked him where he was going and with whom, he got angry and said, "I have a private life too." Eventually, the stress caused my stomach to ache continuously, and Lisa suggested I get a full medical checkup. Since Mike had been seriously ill, I thought it would be better to address any issues early for Kate's sake. As a result, this time I was diagnosed with stomach cancer. Fortunately, the progression seemed to be slow, but still, hospitalization and painful chemotherapy were necessary. At the sudden news of my hospitalization, Kate seemed anxious, but her father was out for the day, and he couldn't comfort her. Instead, my sister-in-law, Lisa, stayed with Kate. To avoid disturbing me while I prepared for the hospital, Lisa took Kate out shopping. While I was silently preparing, my husband, Mike, came home. "What's going on? Are you going on a trip or something?" I yelled at Mike's carefree demeanor. "I have stomach cancer." "Stomach cancer? I've been feeling sick lately, so I went for a checkup today. That's the diagnosis. I need to be hospitalized." Hospitalized? What about the house during that time? Are you leaving it to my sister? I was shocked that the first thing he worried about after hearing about my hospitalization was not concern for me. Granted, it's not a matter of life and death because the progression is slow. But still, facing his wife who is about to undergo painful chemotherapy, the first thing he asks about is the house, which I found utterly disappointing. "Well, this is just perfect." "Huh? Divorce me." "What?" I was confused and bewildered by the sudden request. I had always supported him devotedly when he was ill. Now that I'm the one who's ill, he turns his back on me. Having nearly died once and being able to recover, I feel reborn. I want to start over, and I don't want to take care of an old woman. Despite my being the donor that allowed Mike to recover, not once did he express gratitude. In fact, he handed me a business card of a divorce lawyer. "You don't even wear makeup at home. I can't see you as a woman anymore." "Even if you say that, I'm busy with work, housework, and childcare. I don't have time for makeup." "That's just an excuse. On top of that, you have cancer now. I can't deal with that." I was bewildered by Mike's angry demands to sign the papers quickly. I was already anxious about the cancer diagnosis. However, despite my frustration and anxiety, I wasn't shocked. Ever since he regained his mobility, Mike had been out and about, and I had been feeling suspicious since then. With this illness, all my love and trust for him vanished. What pained me was that for Kate, he was undeniably her only father. I felt guilty about making her a child of a single parent, but with the battle against cancer ahead, I didn't have the energy to repair my relationship with Mike. Humph. Now we are just strangers. Mike smiled satisfactorily. "Hey, is it over?" "Don't just come in like that." "But you're taking too long." Suddenly, an unfamiliar young woman appeared at the entrance. She wore flashy makeup and was dressed in a stylish dress, a beautiful woman. But on closer inspection, her face was familiar. "Are you the nurse from the hospital where Mike was admitted?" It was hard to tell at first glance because she was in plain clothes, but she was the nurse assigned to my husband's room at some point. Apparently, she seems to have been his mistress. "Yes, she is. She supported me devotedly when I was sick. Much more than you ever did." I was dumbfounded by Mike's boastful statement. Supporting a patient devotedly is a fundamental part of a nurse's job. It's frustrating to be compared to her in that regard. "Get out of this house right now. This is my family home, after all." And then he said that assertively. Indeed, this is my husband's family home, but it is now under the name of my sister-in-law, Lisa. However, if I divorce Mike, Lisa and I will become strangers. More than parting with Mike, it's sad to be separated from Lisa, who is kind, reliable, and has a good relationship with my daughter, Kate. But there's nothing I can do about it. I packed my suitcase with just the essentials, in addition to preparing for my hospitalization. I no longer have any love for my husband, and I want to get out of this situation as soon as possible. While I was silently preparing, Lisa and Kate, who had gone shopping, came back. We're home. Oh, do we have a guest? Lisa seemed surprised to see an unfamiliar woman, and Kate, clinging to Lisa, seemed to not understand the situation. So, I clearly stated, I am going to divorce Mike. What? Lisa looked as shocked as I felt. Then, as if realizing something, she handed Kate some snacks she had just bought and told her to eat them in the next room. With only adults left, Lisa immediately glared at my husband. What are you thinking? Mike recoiled for a moment when Lisa, not me, confronted him. He's going to divorce me and start a new life with that woman over there. Since you and I will become strangers, he told me to leave. Lisa's eyes widened in disbelief at my words. Christy is having a tough time, and you? How selfish can you be? You're the one who should leave. Never show your face to me again. Lisa firmly told off Mike, who clicked his tongue, snorted, and left the house. The woman glanced down at me, smirked triumphantly, and followed Mike. Christy, I'm really sorry. After the two left, Lisa looked at me apologetically. I felt guilty for making her, who had done nothing wrong, feel that way. Please don't make that face. You've done so much for me, Lisa, and I can't thank you enough. And I felt a bit relieved that Lisa had decisively cut off Mike. Even if you divorce Mike, I'll always be on your side, Christy. We had already vacated the house we lived in before Mike fell ill. Having been kicked out by Lisa, Mike now had no place to live, but he probably planned to move in with that woman. Although he had insurance and subsidies, Mike shouldn't have much savings left after his major illness. Well, it's none of my business anymore since we'll be strangers. Although we were no longer a married couple, Lisa is still helping me. I have to be hospitalized, and I was thinking of leaving Kate with my parents, but I was wondering what to do about transferring her kindergarten when Lisa said, I'll take care of her. I know Kate will be anxious without her mom, and changing environments will make her even more anxious. My work is stable right now, Lisa said, so I decided to rely on her. About a month after I was hospitalized, I received a call on my smartphone. The name displayed was my ex-husband, Mike, and of course, I ignored the call. Despite ignoring it repeatedly, I kept getting calls from Mike. When I mentioned this to Lisa, who came to visit me, she said she also received calls and ignored them, but he apparently showed up at her in-laws' house. He apparently insisted on seeing me, but she sent him away, saying it was impossible since I was in the hospital. Don't pay attention if he says anything. It's too late for him to realize your worth now. Lisa's words made me feel stronger. After saying goodbye to Lisa, saying, I am going home for today, Mike appeared in my hospital room. Why are you here? I hadn't told Mike which hospital I was admitted to. He didn't even ask. I went to my parents' house today. I saw my sister leaving with flowers, so I thought she might be visiting you. Apparently, he followed Lisa. Mike's persistence was terrifying, and I was puzzled about what he wanted. Then, he clung to me. My illness has recurred. It turns out, Mike's leukemia had recurred. Although remission is possible with a bone marrow transplant, it does not guarantee there will be no recurrence. So, can you be a donor again? I was dumbfounded by his audacity. I was battling a severe illness, cancer, and the ex-husband who abandoned me came back as soon as he fell ill again. It was all too convenient. I don't care. Isn't it your own fault? What do you mean? Didn't you have someone who supported you more devotedly than I did? Upon hearing my words, Mike looked regretful. It seems that as soon as she found out about Mike's recurrence, his girlfriend immediately broke up with him. She apparently said she could handle work but not taking care of a sick person in her personal life. You're the only one I can rely on now, I firmly told Mike, who was begging for my help. I absolutely don't want to. Are you going to abandon me when I am sick? You were the one who abandoned me first, right? Mike was at a loss for words at my response. Besides, I am currently consulting a lawyer about you. A lawyer? Yes, of course. Child support for Kate. I will make sure you pay. But I am sick. I am telling you, I am too. As our fruitless argument continued, a doctor who noticed the commotion came into the room. The doctor restrained Mike, who was trying to grab me, and took him away. It seems that Mike was later handed over to the police. After being interrogated, a restraining order was issued against him. Hearing the commotion, Lisa came back to my room. After hearing the details, she seemed utterly disgusted by Mike's selfishness. I asked Lisa to testify, and after consulting with my lawyer, I decided to claim compensation from Mike and his mistress. Mike was very reluctant, but his mistress agreed to pay immediately, as if it were a severance payment. Since then, I have been slowly recovering. Lisa has been supporting me devotedly, and although Kate is still young, she has been cheering me on without being selfish. The cancer was successfully removed, and no metastasis has been found. On one hand, Mike still hasn't found a donor and is apparently living in fear every day. He managed to pay me the compensation by depleting his savings, but it seems that he won't be able to afford Kate's child support. Since he can't pay child support, he is not allowed to visit, so he is seemingly fighting his illness alone. I still have a good relationship with Lisa. After I was discharged from the hospital, I thought I couldn't bother her anymore, so I was considering moving out with Kate, but she got mad at me, saying I shouldn't think about unnecessary things after recovering from an illness. She told me to spend freely until I saved enough money, and I took advantage of her kindness and lived with her for a while with 3 of us. Since Kate is very attached to Lisa, we eventually decided to rent an apartment nearby even after saving enough money. We go back and forth between each other's houses, and now we have a relationship like best friends. I had a terrible breakup with Mike, and I was struck by an illness and had a hard time, but there are still people like Lisa who have supported me without changing. I may make Kate feel lonely, but I hope she grows up to be a strong, kind, and just woman like Lisa, and I want to continue to get along well in the future.